The Frozen Shadow. It was the dead of winter in a remote town nestled in the Canadian Rockies. The locals had always whispered about the mysterious disappearances that plagued the area, but no one dared speak of it too loudly. They knew something was out there in the frozen wilderness, but fear kept them silent. Sophia was new to the town. She had moved there to escape the chaos of the city, seeking solace in the peace and quiet of the mountains. But peace was the last thing she found. From the moment she arrived, she felt something was wrong. The air was too cold, the nights too dark, and the silence too suffocating. The locals were friendly enough, but they seemed guarded, always casting nervous glances at the forest that surrounded the town. They warned her not to go out after dark and to stay far away from the woods. But Sophia was curious. She had always been drawn to the unknown, and the forest, with its twisted trees and thick underbrush, called to her like a siren's song. One night, unable to resist any longer, Sophia decided to venture into the woods. She bundled up in her warmest clothes, grabbed a flashlight, and set off into the cold, crisp night. The snow crunched under her boots, and her breath came out in thick, white puffs as she walked deeper into the forest. The deeper she went, the colder it got. The trees seemed to close in around her, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The wind howled through the trees, sounding almost like a voice, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. Sophia's flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into darkness. She cursed under her breath and smacked it against her hand, trying to get it to work again. But it was no use. She was alone in the dark, with only the wind and the whispers to keep her company. Suddenly, she heard a crunch behind her, like something heavy stepping on the snow. She spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. But there was nothing there. Just the darkness and the trees. She told herself it was just an animal, maybe a deer, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. She turned to head back to town, but the path had disappeared. The trees looked different, twisted and deformed, as if they had moved while she wasn't looking. Panic set in. She started running, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but no matter which way she went, the trees seemed to close in around her. And then she saw it. A figure, tall and thin, standing just at the edge of her vision. It was too dark to make out any details, but she could see its eyes. They glowed in the darkness, a sickly yellow, like the eyes of a predator. Sophia froze, too terrified to move. The figure began to walk towards her, its movements slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. She was trapped, paralyzed by fear. The figure was close now, close enough that she could see its face. It was pale and gaunt, with sunken eyes and a wide, unnatural smile that stretched from ear to ear. Its skin was a sickly shade of blue, like it had been frozen solid. It reached out a hand towards her, its fingers long and bony, tipped with sharp, black claws. Sophia finally found her voice and screamed, a blood-curdling sound that echoed through the forest. But it was too late. The figure's hand closed around her throat, and everything went black. The next morning, the townspeople found her body, frozen solid in the middle of the forest. Her face was twisted in a mask of terror, her eyes wide open, and her mouth frozen in a silent scream. There was no sign of the figure, but the locals knew what had happened. They had seen it before. They buried Sophia in the town cemetery, her grave marked with a simple wooden cross. But even in death, she was not at peace. On cold, dark nights, when the wind howls through the trees, some say you can still hear her screams echoing through the forest, a warning to those who dare to venture into the frozen shadows.